welcome everybody. Yes, happy Father's Day. Thankfully, we've evolved, and being a father does not mean the same outcome as the journals, right? Otherwise, we'd all be in trouble. So, yeah, thanks to all the people for coming out today and the new members. And we have a wonderful club. The club is 500 members. I forget what it is, and we're all here to sort of support each other, ideally, right? So we all have different perspectives on beekeeping and probably different perspectives on many things. But, we try to come together once a month with activities and just sort of enjoy, hanging out together. And a lot of the relationships go back. I've been in the club 10 or 15 years now. And a lot of people in the room have been here along the journey. So it's kind of nice to see everybody and do this one. So moving on. So the club is a total volunteer organization. We have a team of officers and a team of board members. The officers are up there. Several are in the room. You saw Donna; she runs the meetings. Mark is also involved in the meetings and doing all the tech stuff.
You're the man behind the curtain.
Yeah. So YouTube, we have a CCBA education channel. So those of you on YouTube who want to go back and look at anything in the past that the CCBA has done, you'll probably find a video on there that Mark's done. Russ is here. Sitting right there. He's helping us do the apprentice program this year. Howard is right there. He's the guy with the checks. And the club wouldn't be possible without the officers. And then we run the club through committee. Basically everything that sort of is done through the club is done through committee. If the committee isn't doing the work, then we're not doing the program, right? So there are active committees. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 committees right now. And a lot of the people are here in the room. Charlie's selling queens today. He's the queen team. We're going to be doing the picnic next month, and Monica's going to be planning the picnic, and then Mark does the beginners program, and I do the apprentice program, and then Donna does the women's bee group. So you can see that's how the club runs. We're halfway through the year. We're already at least I am starting to think about 2026. There's always a transition in leadership and life in general. So please continue to show up. And if you have some extra time or resources, please consider getting involved on some level, because we need to sustain this new transition. So thank you all to the committee leads. I appreciate you all. A couple of thank yous. I guess that's how I wrote it.
No, it's how I changed it.
Oh, I think gratitude is important, and Shirley, thanking people who do the work is important. We had a DCA workshop. Of course, we did not find the DCA because we never do. But Robin Underwood from Penn State came out. There were about 20 people. They gathered on my back patio. We split up into 3 teams. We had hot air balloons. We walked around Glen Mills looking kind of foolish, waiting for the drones to hit the balloon. And,
we got about 10 on ours.
Howard's team my team was, Chuck was on my team. Chuck and I, we sat underneath a tree and held up our balloon. We didn't find much, but, I think our team had the most enjoyment out of the evening,
Our team had the most ticks.
Donna would bushwhack because Donna's the adventurous one. She said, I want to go off into the weeds. I was like, you go off into the weeds somewhere, So they got the most takes. Howard's team was the smartest. So he had all the brainiacs on his team that had it all figured out. They knew exactly where they were going. They found the most drones, and Chuck and I sat underneath a tree.
Robin Underwood.
Yeah, Robin
Underwood.
I think it's not Keith, the past president. Some of you was anyone on Keith's DCA? Carol? Yeah. So you know how that goes. You walk around looking for the DCs. Everyone has a DCA out there, right? Your own congregation area. They sit up there in the sky. They're probably not far from your apiary. If you have a bunch of hives, you should get your binoculars out and look around, and you probably will find the DCA. They're not as far away as we generally think they are. So. Anyway, that was fun, and I think it was meant to be, because we were talking about canceling it, because of the rain. And you know what? It rained up until 2:00, and then the sun came out, and then it started raining at 5:00. You know what time the event was? 2 to 5. So, sometimes, Monica, you sort of
You're lucky.
You're lucky. Yes. for those of you who did not see, right out front there, we have a new apiary here, which is very exciting. So we have a 20 by 20 fenced in area with 2 hives right out there. That is going to be a very, even though it's small in footprint, it's going to be very large in impact, right? So that apiary is going to serve us post meetings, hopefully. You know, after the meetings, we can go out and congregate at the apiary and put on our bee suits and check out what's going on in the hives. The VA program out of Coatesville is got a green light, and we've all signed off on that. And I don't know, Chuck, when that's going to be starting.
Right now, I talked to Angela Shafter yesterday. She gave me an update, and all the T's been crossed, I's have been dotted, everything's been approved. Done our volunteer orientation. Now the VA is going through the what ifs. What if this? What if that? Which is typical, she said, for the VA. So she's estimating probably more like the end of the year.
Okay. And there's been a bunch of CCBA members who have stepped forward and volunteered to be part of that program that we're working with the veterans out here. And the veterans are going to come out here and they're going to have their own beekeeping program. So that's going to be kind of cool for our outreach. And the other program, which I shouldn't talk about, but I'm going to talk about because you know, I have no filter. You know, I'm fully transparent. You know, I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to get George Watman, the board chairman, is not here today, so I can go ahead and do it. We are exploring. I guess that would be the right word. Exploring and unintended, right? Unintended. We're exploring. Those of you may already know what I'm about to say if you know what exploring is, right? So we are exploring an Explorer Post program out here with the Boy Scouts, a youth program for youth to be connected to beekeeping. So again, that's not done, but obviously we have an apiary at the Scout Center and they have an Explorer program, right? So you put the dots together and maybe finally, it won't be our program, it'll be the Scouts program, but it'll be a way for those club members who have teenage children who want to do something positive or expose their kids that will have some way to get you involved, which I'm pretty excited about, but hopefully the board will be excited about too.
Are we going to be the chartered organization sponsor?
I don't want to go in too many of the weeds, but that would probably be the way it would work. We would be the sponsor of that. It would be a scout run program, but we would be the sponsor. But again, you didn't hear that from me.
If you make a patch, they'll come.
Is this being recorded?
Go for it.
Again, this requires, like most things, just so you know, I mean, the board, we have a 7-member board here, and they basically are the people that approve or disapprove of like major initiatives like that. So this still, it's sitting with the board right now. I'm hoping that they approve, but they may not because it's a crazy idea. But for those of you who have teenagers or like youth-based type programs, we may have something coming in the near future, which to me seems exciting. So that's Chuck and Mark moved the hives here, and we have hives here. Mark running the beginners program at 4 different sites. Donna, we're doing a website redesign right now, and Donna's behind that. That's going to be really good. And the website is not going to be user friendly. And then Monica for planning the upcoming picnic. So a lot of thank yous for people who work. Okay, so what am I doing with my bees this month? So again, when I teach my beginners, when I teach my apprentices, there's 4 things that are important to assess when you're thinking about your bees or your colonies in general. When you go in, you're thinking about bees, brood, food, and disease. They're the 4 things I always teach my apprentices. Before you go into the hive, you should have those 4 things on your mind. After you close up your hive, you should be able to give me a high-level overview of the condition of your hive based on those 4 things. It takes practice, but if you have a framework of which you approach your hive colony management, you will always be okay. So next slide. So what am I doing this month? So my June.
You said next month, the next slide.
May. I thought that said June. That did say June. Well, it should say June. Mark or no?
I don't know what you're talking about, George. It says June.
I didn't spend a lot of time on it, but okay. So let's talk about must-dos for June. My must-dos for June are, I like weekly inspections. Again, if you're a backyard beekeeper and you're trying to prevent swarming, the best thing to do is get in there weekly and either do something, whether or not give them space, cut out swarm cells, do splits. Really, the swarm season is pretty much over at the summer solstice. So assuming you're running regular 8 or 10 frame hives, they're unlikely to swarm after the middle of June. Now, if you're running small nuke boxes, I guess they could take off at any time, but generally full-size hives are pretty much done swarming after mid-June, and you could have less frequent inspections. A lot of the hives in our area have swarmed. That's because that's what bees want to do, and it seems like this season, like most seasons, the bees do what they're supposed to do, which is swarm. So a lot of us are in sort of a transition state of our hives, right? Our hives are sort of swarmed, and now they're waiting for the new queen to come back, and there's a lot of anxiety about what to do. Is my hive going to be okay? Is it queenless? Is it not queenless? Should I buy a queen from Charlie? Should I get a queen cell from Ed? What should I do? Okay, now what I tell people generally, the best way to assess this is kind of weekly inspections. You're really not queenless until you're basically broodless for at least a week. So if your hive is brood, you go in today, your hive is broodless, you don't see a queen, you come a week later, your hive is still broodless, you don't see any eggs and larvae, then you may be queenless. If you go in your hive and you don't see any eggs and young larvae, and you see a little cap brood along the periphery of the nest, and you may say, well, my queen was there 2 or 3 weeks ago and she's not there now, that's not queen. That requires some patience. 85% of the time, the hive is going to requeen itself, right? Post-swarm, but sometimes it doesn't. And surely, if it doesn't requeen itself and you don't do anything, it's going to be a lost colony, right? Because it's at some point not going to have any ability to requeen itself. That's why they say it's best off not to only have one colony, right? As a new beekeeper, they always tell you should spend more money, right, on your beekeeping early on and try to have 2 colonies. And the reason why that is because, if one colony swarms and looks queenless, you could always take the resources from this hive and put it into that hive, right? So pretty much you could share brood between hives, you could share bees between hives, you could share food between hives. And be fine, right? So if you have a colony that's queenless and you have a colony that's queen right, and you have a frame of open brood, you could take that frame of open brood, stick it in the queenless colony, and see if they make queen cells, right? If they make emergency cells, then you're queenless. If you come back in a week and all that brood is fully developed and there's no queen cell on there, you probably have a queen in there. That's why it's helpful to have more than one colony. You don't need to. If you have one, stick with one, take good care of one, but it's probably always a good idea to at least have. You may not need any more than 2, but 2's not a bad idea.
The other point to that, George, is if you have one colony and you lose a colony, it's 100% loss. If you have 2 colonies, it's only 50% loss.
Yeah, so we're not trying to make it bigger than it needs to be, because there's an art. Who doesn't really try? Paul Listo doesn't. Paul's not here today. Paul's been doing beekeeping forever, right? He was in this club before I joined this club. And somehow, if you always ask Paul how many hives he has, he always says, I have 5 hives. I was like, Paul, how do you always just have 5? Ask Carol, how many hives you have? You have somewhere between 60 and 90, right? Depends on the day. I have somewhere between 40 and 60. I mean, there's a way to keep multiplying beyond what you need or what you want in beekeeping. But there's an art to keeping with 5 hives too, right? 3 to 5 hives. But anyway, I don't know why I mentioned that. So be patient. It's hard to know what to do because sometimes you need that queen. You need that resource, right? Sometimes you buy that queen, you put that queen in that hive, and the queen, you spend $40 on, a sacrifice basically because the hive is queen, right? You put a queen in there and they just kill it, right? So it's hard to know sometimes. That's why it's always good to have friends in beekeeping. You know what I mean? If you know somebody close to you and you can get a frame of brood or something and stick it in there. it's never a bad idea to keep a hive with brood in it, you know? So I'll do this, like I have too many hives, right? So I go into a hive that looks queenless and I say, well, it's probably going to requeen itself, but I don't see any brood. I should wait a week. I'll just stick a frame of cat brood from another hive into that hive. Why am I doing that?
Continue for another week.
So I can continue this craziness for another week. I can come back and assess for another week. The other thing I'm doing is I'm preventing it from becoming a laying worker, right? Because once your hive turns into a laying, once it becomes queenless long enough, the workers start laying eggs, and that's kind of the end of it, honestly, for the most part. You know, so you're trying to prevent your hive from turning into a laying worker hive, and the best way to do that is to give it brood. If a hive has brood in it, it's probably not going to turn into a laying worker hive. The other thing is I'm keeping that hive sort of balanced as far as bee population, right? I'm infusing it with a frame of brood that's going to hatch out, and then there are going to be young bees. So when the queen eventually comes around, there's going to be young bees still in there. So if you have a bunch of hives and you go into a hive that's queenless, and even if you don't think even if you think it's going to be queen right and you have resources, stick a frame of brood into it. It just buys you another week or two until that queen starts laying. Okay, so I know this is, a quick question. Mite count. I had my apprentices over yesterday. We did mite counts on 4 hives, I think. I got one and 2 or something like that. So I started my mite counts. June is when you really want to start your mite counts. Raise your hand if you have no idea what you're going to do with mites this year. So we have some people that have no idea what they're going to do with mites. Raise your hand if you're going to not treat for mites this year. If you're not going to treat, if you're going to do no mite treatment. Oh, come on, there's got to be somebody in here who's okay. Raise your hand if you're going to do a universal, like you're going to treat all your hives no matter what for mites. Okay, there's the majority. And raise your hand if you're going to do mite counts and you're going to treat based on your mite count numbers. Okay, so it looks like so there's basically 3 things you could do for your mite management. Well, there's 4 things you could do. There's 4 things. One, you could have no clue.
Always.
You can have absolutely no clue, not even think about it, have no clue. Right? That's option 1. I wouldn't advise it. Usually doesn't end well. Option number 2 is you could do nothing. Right? You could say bees will be bees. Bees will be bees. Let the strongest survive. Right? I mean, nod your head. You've heard all of it, right? If I offend somebody, good. Honestly, because I'm just throwing perspectives. No judgment on what perspective is right, but that's a perspective, right? Bees will be bees. Nature's been around a long time. I'm gonna let the strongest survive. I'm not gonna treat, and then whatever comes out are the bees I want because they survive, right?
Bees for livestock.
That's an option, right? So people do that option. Did some people are successful with that option? Absolutely. Otherwise, nobody would say it, right? If nobody was successful, they wouldn't be saying that they do that. So there are people that are successful. How do the people get successful with that? One of 3 ways. They have lots of hives and they lose track of how many they lose. I'm being honest.
Only the 60 hives.
Right. If you start with 60 and end up with 30, you still have too many hives. Number 2, they run small hives and they swarm often, right? So you run small hives and they swarm often and they get lots of brood breaks, right? So the brood breaks, the mites don't reproduce, and they're able to do that because their hives swarm once or twice a year, right? So that's the other option. Or 3, they truly have hygienic bees. Like they truly have bees that manage their mites, right? That keep the mite population low by grooming or by grow or sensitive hygiene. Like they're able to manage those mites by themselves. Now, let me guarantee you, nobody in this room, I'll bet no one in this room can absolutely guarantee me that their hive is hygienic. That takes a lot of work to absolutely guarantee you that hive is hygienic. Honestly, just because you bought a hygienic queen, right? I bought a hygienic queen. Bullshit. Honestly, you bought a daughter from a hygienic queen, right? So no one when they get a hygienic queen, that queen breeder is not testing that queen that you bought to prove it's hygienic. They may have tested the parent, the mother of that, and they may know the mother colony is hygienic. But that mother had a daughter, and that daughter went out and made it with a bunch of drones. That queen that's sitting in your hive may or may not be hygienic. I'm not trying to burst anyone's bubble here. Believe me, all of our bees are special, right? I mean, we're all special. We all have special bees. So, the only way, if you know you're hygienic, is to do a hygienic testing, which Ed Sharp can teach you how to do if you want to do it. The other way that's sort of not bad to know if you're hygienic is just do mite levels, right? If your hive keeps your mite levels low, the chances are you may have some hygienic. Anyway, that's a long side, not to offend anybody, but that's option one, is to not treat because you don't mind losses because you have too many bees. You have hygienic bees, or you run small hives that swarm off. You can do that. Number two is to treat universally, right? So that's what I do. If you ask, every president of this club, I think, has always treated universally. Why do the presidents of this club treat universally? Why?
You're lazy.
You're so smart.
We're smart? No, absolutely no. Keith maybe, but I'm not. Are we lazy?
No.
Probably not, because we're out there treating hives. Why?
Time of bees drift in.
Bees drift in, time, and we have too many hives.
Yeah.
All presidents of this club have had too many hives, trust me. So how am I going to do mite levels on 60 hives on it? I mean, I'm just. And then if I have 10 hives in a yard and one or two hives are high, what do I do with the rest of the hives, right? If one hive is high, do you treat all the hives? It's unclear, right? Because there's drift. You know what I mean? Like anyway, it gets. So every president of this club has always been a universal treater.
Can one bad hive infect the other hives?
Yes. So there's drift, and you got mite drift between hives. So, and universal treatment probably will give you the best survival, honestly, right? So if you universally treat everything, the chance of your hive surviving is probably the highest, right? Because you're blasting all the mites out of it, right? So universal treatment, we're going to hear about treatments in a bit, but they could be different things, right? But it's generally treatment 3 times or year round. You're always trying to hit the mites low. So that's universal treatment. If you want your bees to survive, that's probably the best way to do it. And then the last is, I got confused. Check your mite levels and treat based on what percent they are. If they're over 2%, treat. If they're under 2%, you don't have to treat, right? Because the downside of universal treatment is resistance and expense. We spend a lot of money on mite treatments every year. You're treating, every mite treatment's probably costing you somewhere between $5 and $10 a hive now. So if you have 50 hives and you're doing 3 treatments a year, that's $15 times 50 hives. You're spending $1,000 on mite treatments a year, just on treating 50 hives. So there's an expense that you may not need to do it. And then there's treating mite count. So mite counts in June, July, August. This is the best management practice. Everybody says the right way to do it is to check your mite levels. If your mite levels are over 2%, treat. If they're not, then you don't need to treat. Okay, I just took up too much time. To consider.
Shocking.
First time ever.
You will miss me at some point. Maybe not. Some won't. I'm sure some of you will. Can't wait for a different perspective. To consider. So I did my mite counts. I'm universally treating, but I think it's always good to do mite counts. It's good to know what's going on. If you're looking for a problem, don't wait until your bees have the other thing. I'm going to say one more thing and then I'll move on from mites. If you look at your hive and you say your hive is fine, your mite count can be high. If you look at your hive and say your hive is sick, your mite count will definitely be high. So, don't wait until something looks like it's a problem before you decide to do something about it. If you wait to have a physical problem from mites, your hive is going to die. If you wait to say, it looks like I have a brood problem or I have a mite problem. I see mites on my bees. The hive will die. There's very few hives who recover from being sick from viruses or from mites. You got to get it before they get to that problem. To consider, make splits. If you only have one hive, you can consider making a split to make 2 hives. The club has queens. Ed has queen cells. You know, there's resources out there to make splits. Everyone should harvest some honey if you want honey. If you go into each hive, probably the outside frames have some calf honey on it. You know what I mean? Like nothing's going to go bad if you take a few pounds of honey out of your hive just for yourself. You can, if need be, you can feed it back again, enjoy it, you know, or at least take your hive tool. And yesterday we took I took my hive tool and I took an edge frame and we uncapped it and everyone stuck their finger in the honey and ate it. People were like thrilled. I'm like, this is so cool. Yes.
Just, I know it's off subject, but when you harvest your your honey, what, for you veterans, how much honey should you get, say, out of 10 frames? So you didn't do it too early. I mean, just basically, what do you get out of 10 frames?
Medium or deep?
Medium.
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 You get about 2 pounds, two pounds. It depends on the frame and how much honey is on it. But for a medium frame, you get about 2 pounds of honey off a medium frame and probably 4 pounds of honey off a deep frame. Again, that's a little bit on the lower side. I know some of you guys will get more than that, but on average, that's about what you get. You know,
From 10 frames.
10 frames. Oh, 10 frames would be 2 pounds, like 20 pounds, 25 pounds off medium frames.
It all depends on how, like if you run more space, they're gonna fill it thicker.
Right, like that, if you put 8 frames instead
Correct.
of 10 in there, what we notice
It's
is,
thicker off of each frame.
and it's
yeah.
easier to harvest.
To cap it, yeah.
So you veterans, do you like the 8 or the 10?
8.
Yeah.
But 8, you talking about 8 frame hives or 8 in a 10 frame?
8 and a 10 frame.
8 in a 10 frame, yeah. I do 9 in a 10 frame.
Do you? Okay.
That's what I do.
Yes, I'm waiting.
Yeah, and they have a nice spacer you can buy that spaces the 9 out.
Yeah, okay.
If you're a new beekeeper, you know, ask for help. Don't be afraid to email me or go to your local mentor and ask for help. Anyway, that's all I got. Thank you all.